Hello, America. It's Mike Brock. It's again me coming to you from sunny Southern California. How is everyone doing? As I've recovered further from my bout with illness, I wanted to come to you again with my thoughts of the day, such as they are, as we proceed through this crisis that we are in. And this is a crisis. We're in a civilizational crisis. I think that's fair to say. Some people might think that's exaggerated. I don't think so. I think the historians will look back on this point in history and they'll agree that the most powerful country in the world is being steered by a a cancerous growth, if you will, of its Republican system, of the Madisonian system that we have so inherited, and it's very obviously it's very important to um note this and understand this and to shout this from the rooftops. I certainly wish that my fellow citizens were doing more about it than they are, and that more of my fellow citizens agreed with me that this was in fact the situation that we're in. More and more Americans are coming to that conclusion every day. I remain hopeful that enough will soon enough, in short order, that we will eventually rid ourselves of this Trump regime. But I do think that we have to hold a bunch of thoughts in our heads, right? One is that, like, we're gonna we're gonna be okay for the most part. I think most people are gonna be okay, right? A lot of people are not going. I mean, I don't want to diminish the fact that there are a lot of people who are not okay, right? Like, there are people in war zones around the world who are not okay. There are American citizens who are being abused by this administration, who are economically desperate right now. So when I say we're okay, I don't mean in the sense that, like, there isn't desperation out there. There is. We're going to talk about this, and I think that desperation is going to get worse. But what I mean is like, as a people, right? Like, I think we want to hold this understanding, this historically grounded understanding, that things have been worse in the past, right? As bad as things are right now, I think most people, if they could get into a time machine and go live in America at the height of the Great Depression, would probably step right back into that time machine and return to the America of 2026, as screwed up as it is, right? Like, I think that's true. Um, so which isn't in any way to, like, diminish how bad it's gotten and how much worse it may get, but we should not. I don't. This isn't. And like I said, I don't. I mean, I think we need to be quite alarmed and angry at our current situation, and worried about our children's future. And all of this is true. However, it with that said, it's also true that if you're here listening to me, watching this, your situation is certainly far better than the situation of the average Ukrainian or Iranian or Palestinian or Venezuelan or North Korean. If in country, I know that people like to think of China as a superior example to America now in the world, but I mean, like, China is a very corrupt regime, and China is a very tiered society, right? The face that China shows the world and its tier one cities, Beijing and Shenzhen and Shanghai and and what is it, and Guangzhou, I think, right? It was the other one. And and a few others, are um, you know, like like this is the elite strata of Chinese society, where the most privileged elites live in China, and then you have these tier two and third and fourth and fifth tier cities in China. And you don't tend to see those cities much. Some people report on them, and there is it's a different story even there, right? And there's suffering, and China's been carrying out ethnic cleansing against the Uyghur people, and it and in its eastern province of I can't remember, why can't I remember the name? But I just want to ground everybody in the fact that human beings throughout history, especially before modern history, have endured far worse than we're all experiencing collectively, right? There was more war, there was more suffering in the past. It was harder for everybody on average, which is cold comfort, right? If you're fighting in a trench in Ukraine, it's cold comfort if you're, living in a tent in Gaza. To hear me say that, but it is true that there are things about our world that are better even now, despite everything that's happened, than they were in the past. Yet suffering is still present, right? Inequality is still present. That there still remains a great contrast between the comfortable and the desperate, the rich and the poor, however you want to characterize that. Um, and what I will say is, I think our societies have become very culturally sick. We're sick cultures. We have, I think, our our popular culture in in the West, in America, has become very pathological, very very nihilistic. The way in which, um, there's a term that some people use now about the ways in which the culture has come to celebrate vice, to be amused. We People call it vice signaling, right? On the right? Like this weird sort of phenomenon of right wing influencers, people like Elon Musk, who just act poorly in plain public view, and this is sort of celebrated as some kind of like weird morass of free expression and and I mean, I don't even know like what it is, the celebration of unseriousness, um that these people that act completely unseriously um have somehow come to be seen in our culture as thought leaders, people that we should look up to. I mean, the fact that this has happened is an indictment of our culture. I mean, I mean, a lot of, before like Elon Musk went full fascist, right? He still was a jackass in public, and we tolerated it, right? He was like sort of the goofy genius. And there just kind of came a point in our culture where we started viewing sort of, the sort of the expectation that a public figure should act, with restraint and consideration and conscientiousness. That this came to be seen as like somehow like in inauthentic and bad. And what we really needed were, the kinds of people we saw on reality shows in positions of power, and that's in fact what we got. Um, in fact, our president is a reality show host. I would argue that the entire right-wing political ecosystem is in a sense like a reality show. Right-wing influencers and the right-wing media, in a sense, I think um, are living politics as reality show more than they're living it as, you know, a search for the good life, right? Which I think a healthy culture is in search of the good life, right? You know, that's what I think. I think that's true. I mean, I think if anybody sat down and thought to themselves, what if we could define what a healthy culture is without bringing in, you know, the the specific, you know, specific forms of culture that like we might have here in the West and they might have in the East or in the Middle East or in Africa, that like, you know, cultures can look very differently, but like I think what a healthy culture is a culture that is the practice of wanting to live together and developing common rituals and practices and behaviors as a society that invites participation in social life, that invites that invites a sense of safety and belonging. Like these are kind of like universal values that you can kind of think about as like what is the purpose of culture. That's what the purpose of culture is, these things, right? And you can find these things in different cultures. They don't have, like, you can go to, you know, Italy or to Spain, or to South America, right? And you can see rich cultures that fit these criteria, and you can find them here in America too, right? There's rich cultures here in America, right? I mean, uh, you know, we don't like to think of it like that, but we do. We have rich cultures all across this country, urban cultures, rural cultures, um, you know, weird, strange cultures that you find in and far flung small towns and rural Texas. I mean, like, so like, but like we've lost, I think, as a sort of like popular culture, you know, a shared culture, sort of a sense of like the importance of, I mean, dare I say, seriousness. That seriousness itself is like somehow been cast by people as inauthentic, that like it's performative to like take a moral stand, to say like I think there should be, I think that like it's a bad thing that like that climate change is leading to changes in rainfall patterns and causing ocean levels to slowly rise as we lose polar ice sheets, uh and the carbon dioxide sink that the ocean is leading to a change in its pH. It's acidification, that's leading to coral reef collapse around the world. This is observable. This isn't made up. And that, like, you know, you might say something like that. You're like, this is just performative eco-fascism. You know, like, I mean, like we have a planet, right? Like we live on it. I mean, I do think I actually I don't want to like not put in my own critiques here, because I do think a lot of environmentalist left wing activists are fucking crazy, right? Sometimes in the ways that like the right says they are, and they like it's kind of the same thing with um hyper identity politics on the left. Is there is actually some craziness. Like I happen to be someone who believes that the environmental movements, like uh decades long crusade against nuclear power, is it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at a civilizational scale. Even if you know, talk about Chernobyl and the Fukushima Daiichi disaster in Japan, um, like like a lot of things we do as humans are dangerous. Um, Getting in a car is dangerous, right? Tens of thousands of people die a year in the United States in car accidents. Swimming in a pool is dangerous. Drowning in a swimming pool is one of the most common ways that people accidentally die. Look it up. So I mean, nuclear power has dangers, and it's killed the. I mean, you can look this up. Nuclear power has killed the least amount of people, even accounting for the disasters that have happened. Like we've had a few big disasters, but we also have thousands of nuclear reactors around the world that have never had a problem, right? In Canada and France, here in the United States, we have nuclear reactors like that are still running, 30, 40 years old, that have never had a meltdown. They've never leaked radiation. France, the country of France, is nearly it's like almost like over three quarters powered, I believe, by nuclear power. The nuclear waste thing comes up, so I see someone in the chat bringing up the nuclear waste. I mean, the nuclear waste thing is another example, right, of the environmental movements. Like I don't want to say insanity, but I mean, like, there are reasonable things that we've come up with, and like, for example, the general approach has been, in countries like Canada and Europe, abandoned deep mines, with after cooling the fuel and creating concrete sarcophaguses for the spent material. After several years of cooling in a cooling pool, the spent nuclear fuel gets cool enough. You put it in concrete once it's cool, and you put it on an elevator and you bury it 10 miles underground, to be there forever. And this happens, and we've tried to build these sorts of things in the United States. What happens is the Sierra Club comes and they sue and they have protests, and they they chain themselves to the entrance of the mine and say never, never, and then the spent fuel just ends up getting stored on site at nuclear power plants in cooling pools, which is actually less safe. So that's an example of how the environmental movement has managed this problem. They've actually made the situation worse by forcing us to do more on-site storage, because they won't let us bury it underground. There are people at Greenpeace and stuff like that who are just like, this is not something, this will happen over my dead body. So I think that's crazy. Based on what we know about science and the risks. And then obviously they'll come back and say, well, how will some future civilization in 50 or 60 or 100,000 years, when they're digging down there, know that there isn't nuclear waste there? I mean, if there's a civilization on this planet in 50,000 years, they're probably going to have way more advanced technology than us, and they're going to have the same kind of radiation detectors that we have, and they're going to notice this. So at some point you're just sort of you're taking this principle, the precautionary principle, the what if this happens, to the extreme, right? And so I don't think the arguments against modern nuclear power, given the safety record of nuclear power plants, is a good argument. Is spent nuclear fuel dangerous? Yes, it is. It's dangerous, especially dangerous for, the first 12 to 24 months, after it comes out of a reactor. It has to sit in cooling pools. It's very hot. It's very hot. It would light the atmosphere on fire if you just let it out. But it decays, right? It has a half life, and um the energy output of the um alpha particle and decay from these spent fuel rods, they go down, right? According to the half life, and eventually they get cool enough that you can basically put it in a concrete sarcophagus and bury it 10 miles underground, and it's not going to bother anybody for millions of years. And this is the approach that has been proposed, and it's the approach that environmental activists will say, over my dead body, you're gonna fucking bury that in the ground. So I mean, I don't think it's a reasonable. I don't think it's a reasonable objection. I think the alternative has been that our dependence on fossil fuels, which is heating up the planet, leading to decreases in biodiversity, changing weather patterns. So remember, the fear of the spent nuclear fuel causing trouble for some future civilization 50,000 years ago underneath the mountains of Colorado, big fucking problem, right? For the anti-nuclear people, this is we gotta stop this program right now. This is the most important thing. I will chain myself to this entrance and never allow this to occur. Versus the thing that is occurring, which is the fact that our planet is experiencing this superheating. I mean, it's not superheating, but it's we're gonna survive this. Don't get me wrong, but this is not reasonable. This is not reasonable. It's not a reasonable ejection of nuclear power. I'm sorry. And by the way, that's my view on that. So but to be fair, this is not environmentalist. There are a lot of environmentalists, including the environmentalists at the UN's International Panel on Climate Change, that are pro-nuclear power. The majority of the world's climate scientists are pro-nuclear power. This is you can look it up. This is true. But there is a sub-segment of radical environmentalists, usually on the left wing of politics, that considers this a non-starter. It's something we shouldn't even talk about, and I disagree with him greatly on this point. And that's that does need to be said, and I think that also sort of relates, right, to I think the necessity of so if someone mentions the radon exposure, toxic chemicals in groundwater. I mean, look, we understand that. The thing is, we understand these things and we have strict regulations for them, right? You're when we survey a site for where to bury nuclear material, we take into account things like, are there underwater aquifers here? Is what is the water table situation? This is a 15-mile deep salt mine, meaning that there's there's no hydrological activity, so we don't expect that there's going to be a groundwater contamination issue. And then even then, that's not good enough. So I mean, you get into these future scenarios of what if future humans accidentally walk into this salt mine cave and irradiate themselves? I mean, I don't know. It's if that's your approach to thinking about risk management, then it's not clear that you should ever do anything at all, because you could always engage in a reductio ad absurdum on this point. Anyways, I don't want to talk all about nuclear power on this point, but I do. Someone's asking me if my fever made me illogical. I don't think I've made a logical error here. What logical error have I made? Um anyways, so so I think that's a example, right, of I would say that's an example of, right, I think of an unhealthy aspect, right, of our public discourse, that having these conversations are, I don't know, we struggle as as a society, um to hold, to hold these nuances, like to think about risk, in a sane way, right? You know, we tend we have we do tend, like, right, we have this sort of, we fear death, and we fear disaster and catastrophe, and we can have both a tendency to overly fixate on the possibility of certain kinds of catastrophes, and we have a sometimes have a propensity to deny that catastrophe is at hand. Um and and part of the insanity, I think, when we think about things around, like, the debate over nuclear power, is, like, we do have a catastrophe, which is climate change, which is, the energy crisis, our dependency on fossil fuels, something which is being exacerbated and actually made much more clear, right, by the Strait of Hormuz crisis. Um that, like, we look at the sort of the risk of, the spent uranium rods and concrete sarcophaguses, stored in abandoned salt mines 15 miles underground, and the, like, absolute sort of crisis, the, moral emergency that is the use of hydrocarbon based energy sources. And, like like, in fact, even if you could convince me that somebody in 50,000 years might accidentally walk into that cave and get radiation poisoning, you might, like, there might actually be, like, this is, like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna, like, be like a philosopher here about this, like, that would be one casualty versus how many millions of casualties are we gonna have as a result of continuing to use fossil fuels. Not to say that, like, no life is important, but I mean, like, if you want to, I'm not a utilitarian, but if you want to be utilitarian about it, like, it just kind of gives you, like, a sense of, like, how people's sense of, like, you know uh comparative risks is just, like, way off, just way off, like, I mean, um and the truth is people have accidentally walked into caves and gotten radiation poisoning, including, I think, including in some ancient Egyptian tombs, where, like, the ancient Egyptians, apparently, like, buried radioactive rocks, and, like, so I mean, like, thinking about those things is sort of, like, front of mind, is, uh, you know which relates, I think, to, my critique of sort of long-termist ethics, right? The sort of the thinking behind, like, effective altruism, and my critique there is that, like the only real thing that we have is now, right? It's now. It's right now. We have right now. We have our ourselves and our children to feed right now. We have a climate crisis that's getting worse by the year and by the decade right now. And we have certain realities in this, situation. Now, there are some people, right, on the left that say, yes, that's true. This is why we have to have degrowth, that human beings need to voluntarily accept a decrease in their quality of life to come more into ecological balance with the earth. This is a not unpopular view, right, among certain aspects of the modern left. It's, I think, a dangerous one. One, because like it brings up memories of Pol Pot and the Cambodian killing fields, and this sort of idea that like that humanity should have negative progress. It also, also mirrored honestly in sort of Gandhi's Marxist agrarianism and some other like thoughts in terms of like socioeconomic thoughts around this that have like honestly uh in all of its forms, this idea on the left, of degrowth, of voluntarily lowering living standards for ecological purposes or cultural purposes, has led to disaster. It's led to famine. It's led to permanent poverty. And I think most importantly, in democratic countries, I don't think it's something you're ever really going to convince people to do. So I think this idea of degrowth as the solution, rather than pursuing like clean energy abundance through nuclear, solar, wind, ever efficient batteries, and building up abundant clean energy in order to maintain living standards, to me is like the only serious political path forward. Um, and so, I think, and I know I'm talking maybe for the first time about like how I sort of like view like where I think policy should be structurally on these issues going forward, because these things are in fact emergencies. They are emergencies for our civilization. We do have to deal with the ever growing risks that our activities, our industrial activities, and our energy production activities, in the form of adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere in the quantities that we are, and as well as methane. I don't know why I say methane. I listen to way too many British and European political podcasts. It's got me saying methane instead of methane. Um, 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 and so I mean this is I mean I think like where like the pragmatic view must arrive, that like a successful democratic agenda, right? I think, and I do think, by the way, I do think energy policy is the most important economic policy that, and I know that like people can debate that healthcare or education is more important. I disagree. I think, this is my belief. This is just my belief from thinking about like really what ultimately drives cost of living and affordability. There's no greater thing that a government can do to push down cost of living for everybody. Um, I mean, we'll talk about land use laws and zoning laws in a second, as I think a very close second. But I think like in terms of like the one most important thing that government can do is like produce the conditions, if not like provide, with public utilities and public infrastructure, cheap, abundant energy. Cheap, abundant energy means that everything else is cheaper, right? You like the more electricity that we have at our disposal, then like the more work we can afford in like just as a thermodynamic concept, collectively we can offload to to energy use. We like, in fact, like even materials, even the materials we use to build buildings, right? Like if we had free, cheap, abundant energy, carbon fiber construction of vehicles, which would make them much safer. I mean, like with high end sports cars and stuff like that, and Formula One racing cars have carbon fiber bodies, and they're like objectively much safer than the vehicle bodies, the aluminum, and even like unicast bodies, even the more advanced ones today. Like a carbon fiber body is like far safer and lighter, and means that like the car can drive faster because it consumes less energy. But like creating carbon fiber is very energy intensive. You have to use a lot of heat in these ovens. And like the main cost, right, to carbon fiber production is an energy input. So if like we have 10 times the electricity, and electricity costs 1/10, the amount of energy cost to make, you start seeing car manufacturers say, well, suddenly carbon fiber looks a lot more attractive than aluminum, right? Like, so like energy is like the most important input, right? Like to driving down cost of living. So like this, and so this is where I think degrowth is crazy. I also think it's why actually I think like when like despite like whatever happens, right? Like we need to transition to sustainable energy so our atmosphere stabilizes. We need to do that, right? This is like an emergency. We have to do that anyways. But we should also want to like use these technologies to create as much energy, cheap, abundant energy. And I think governments should subsidize this. I think like, yeah, I mean, like I would like, I think like the government should like spend hundreds of billions of dollars like bathing the country in solar farm, like wherever you can put a efficient solar farm and grid connected batteries, right? For nighttime. I know I mentioned nuclear. We should build nuclear power plants, right? For as sort of for baseload power, but we should also be going crazy with solar and battery. We should be doing all of these things and driving down the cost of electricity to as cheap as we can possibly make it. Like that to me is like from a just economics, like thermodynamic perspective, and just terms of like people's quality of life, cheap energy is what we need. And that's sort of my opinion. I know I realize I'm kind of talking about my like sort of my policy views for the first time publicly. This is fun. People can react to that as they will. And the second biggest thing that we can do in this country to drive down cost of living is significant land use reform. We need to force cities and local municipalities to permit the construction of more apartment buildings everywhere, quite frankly. People are like young people like can't find places to live. Where they try to move to cities to get jobs, they have to. You hear stories of people living 2 hours drive outside the city because they just like can't afford it. And I live here in Los Angeles. I live in a part of LA that's actually I'm actually in a neighborhood that's been upzoned. So in my neighborhood here, and the local community here is very angry about it. I'm in a single family house here, but like because this is an upzoned lot here in Los Angeles, if a developer wants to redevelop this property, they have to build, if I'm not mistaken, I think it has to, I don't know if it's two, I think it might be it has to be at least a duplex They have to build a duplex. It has to be sorry, I'm getting an emergency alert here, which is a silver alert, apparently here. A senior citizen in distress here in Los Angeles. And like, people here in my, and so on this block that I'm in, I'm not going to tell you exactly where I live. We have seen some of that. We've seen some of the houses sold, and we've seen a duplex or a triplex get built where on one of these, I think these are 6,000 or 7,000 square foot lots, where they just used to be like bungalows or single family homes. And this has led to massive protests and angry people. And I get flyers, neighborhood associations, drop flyers telling me that this is the end of Los Angeles as we know it. I don't mind. I don't mind that there's apartment buildings being built in my neighborhood. I don't mind. I don't think that I have a right. I mean, I think I'm very privileged to live in a nice little home, in Los Angeles, but like, and I like my street, but like I don't have this sort of sense that like, that I'm entitled, I'm entitled to sort of the way it is, to always be the way it is. So this is an upzone neighborhood, and that makes locals very, very mad. Not me. So you could call me a YIMBY, one of those people who say yes, absolutely. If someone comes to me and says next door, or just want you to let you know that your next door neighbor, their house is going to get knocked down by a developer and turned into a duplex, and my response will be, oh, that's fun. I'll have 2 new neighbors instead of 1. Isn't that nice? So I mean that, and I think that's my view. I live in a city. This is Los Angeles. I don't live like, so I mean, like that's, and I know that probably 70 to 80% of my neighbors would be screaming in my face if they were hearing me say this. And I think they're all wrong. I just think they're wrong. So that's my view. I don't like, I don't think I'm entitled really to like anything really. I mean, I feel like I worked hard and I made some money and I bought a house and I live in it, and I'm grateful that I've been able to afford that. And I want other people to be able to afford that. I want children to be able to afford that. I don't think people should have to spend as much money as I did on a house to own a house, right? So, I think that, that's, I think, the way I view these things. And so I think if we want to get really serious about, like really driving down the cost of living, the two biggest economic drivers, we need cheaper, plentiful energy, and we need more housing. I'm getting more alerts on my phone, which I will cancel off. This is very irritating. A silver alert has. I would like you to be quiet. This is very embarrassing. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I gotta. Click on the link for additional information. https:// Okay, I got it to stop. I don't know why it was explaining that to me out loud. So yeah, back to that. Energy, housing. And I think, the third thing that I think we need to really tackle in this country, I think, is healthcare. I think it's become very, very clear that the idea that, I mean, the thing is that like Americans like pay I don't know, like what is it, like 5 times more for healthcare than Canadians, like all in, like in terms of the taxes they pay to subsidize Medicare, Medicaid. That's per person, by the way. And when you try to like figure out where like, that 5 times the amount of healthcare spending, and by the way, the Canadian system has serious problems, um, that that shouldn't go unmentioned, right? People in the United States, if they need a hip replacement, they get it scheduled, and it tends to happen within a few months. In Canada, this can be sometimes an excruciating 2 to 3 year wait. So you see I mean, but on the other hand, right? In in Canada, right? Like emergency care and a lot of preventative care is good, or is as good as what most people get, right, from their frontline general practitioners and emergency room care in the United States. So I mean, there's a lot of sometimes the arguments that a lot of people on the right will use, like a lot of criticisms they have of the Canadian healthcare system, for example, are true. They're true criticisms in the sense that like there are aspects of the fact that and by the way, Canada doesn't have a single national model. Actually, the Canada actually administers it has separate healthcare systems for each province, and a lot of them are run very differently. Like the one in the province of Ontario, where Toronto is like generally far better run than what you find in Quebec. The French speaking province in Canada, where like the level of service and like is just far worse. So, and France has like a different model. Australia has a different model. Japan has a different model than Canada. But the point is that like, there's a bunch of different models, and I think, we can learn a lot about the successes and failures of the various models around the world in this country and look at our problem. And I'm pretty sure we could probably come up with a model that would drastically improve Americans' health and improve access to health care, and reduce the percentage of GDP that's going into healthcare in this country, which would drive down the cost of living and make life more pleasant on average for everybody. Because like the current system is like clearly fucked and broken. Like, I mean, you go to a hospital, you go to an emergency room, or have an emergency room visit, and you just receive random invoices for like 7 months after that for like $17.93, and like you owe $400 for this lab, and you're like, what is going on here? Like what? And they just show up sometimes like months, and you're like, what is this? I don't understand. Like, I thought insurance covered this. So it's like, well, no, there's like it's like, it's insane. The system's insane here. And so like we definitely have to do something about that. I mean, I think here's the other unpopular view that I have, that will make everybody hate me in equal measure when it comes to sort of the policy that I think we should pursue, because it's the correct one, is that I do think we not only should we significantly increase taxes on the wealthy, we should do this, right? I support this. This has to happen. This is clear. Like this is insane. We also have to like be realistic about like the magnitudes of money that we can extract from the wealthy in this country, right? Because there's only so much, right? The truth is that like we have like an ongoing set of costs in this country, right? So if, let's say, like we have like our federal budget is like what, like almost $7 trillion now. It's like almost $7 trillion a year now. So you have to sort of think about this, right? In terms of like, you see someone like, you know, a billionaire who's worth 3.7 billion dollars. If you were to take away 70% of their 3.7 billion dollars, that would like be kind of not that much money, right? Like relative to a $7 trillion budget. So I think that like but like, these people are also making a lot of money and they should be paying more money over time. And I support that. I just want to like dispense with this notion that we can fix our problems as a society by simply taking all of their money away. If we were to tomorrow, like this is not an argument against a wealth tax. I support a wealth tax. I've written about this publicly. I'm simply trying to get people to be realistic about how much of the public finance problem we're going to solve if we do this. If we were to seize 100% of all billionaire wealth in this country, I think I did the math once. I think we'd be able to run the country we'd be able to run the federal government for maybe 4 or 5 months. And then we wouldn't have any money left. And then we would have to go back and tax the middle class to pay for the rest of it. So like, we have to recognize that the government's budget is really big. And so even if we were to fully shift the tax burden onto the billionaires in the grand scope of things don't have enough money to pay for everything. They have a lot of money, more money than you, like thousands of times more money than any of us, right? They own yachts and stuff like that, but they don't own wealth on the scale of a nation of, 370 million people, right? Like they don't exist. Like their wealth doesn't like scale over that. Now, so what does this mean? I think it means fairly that all taxes have to go up. They should go up more on the rich, but they're going to have to go up on the upper middle class. Like I think this idea that you see from politicians that we're only going to increase income taxes for people over $500,000 a year doesn't provide enough money doesn't pay for universal health care. That doesn't it won't I'm not even sure if it will close the deficit. I think we need to recognize that in order to have a sustainable operating budget every year to pay for the things that we're going to want to pay for, we're going to have to have some modest increases, even in middle class taxes in the coming years. But I think that middle class people should be getting more for that. They should be getting health care, and they should be getting, more reliable government services that improves their quality of life, right? It should feel like a positive trade-off, but that's going to have to be a thing, right? If you think I'm just making this up, I'm not I'm telling you, I support increasing taxes on billionaires. I support wealth taxes, for reasons of political power. But the idea that that alone will bring in the trillions of dollars a year in revenue that will be necessary to do all the things that people want to do, like have universal health care, is just not possible. It's not possible. People say, show my numbers. I mean, you can, I'm not going to do this right now, but if anybody thinks I'm wrong about this, they want to go and do some research. You are free to send me an email. You can reach me through my Substack email, mikebrock@substack.com. And I will be more than happy to see you wrong, to see you prove me wrong on this. And the only, and here's the proof. Here's the proof. Here's the proof. Middle class taxes are higher in Canada. They're higher in Europe. They're higher in Japan. They're higher in all these other countries. They're much, much higher in Scandinavia. The middle class in those countries pay a lot more in taxes than the middle class in America do. So, and the rich pay a lot more. So this idea that we just like have to tax the rich and we're not going to have to sort of like revisit like our entire tax burden as a society. Like, I know it's a tough pill for people to swallow right now, but like we're like paying what, like 40% of our like operating budget now on servicing this ever increasing debt. That's a problem. We got to do something about that. And so we're going to have to really revisit the tax code. We have to make it more fair. And I agree, it should be more progressive, and rich people should pay a lot more. But I do think that middle taxes are going to have to go up. I'm not saying like an insane amount. Like, I think I've looked at numbers like maybe 2 or 3% or something, right? Like, but I think that what those taxes should pay for should be healthcare. They should be Social Security. They should be, protection against like becoming like homeless and downtrodden if you lose your job. I do think we should have social safety nets, and I think we all need to kind of collectively participate. Now, I'm not saying that like the poor people, like people who are, working class poor people should like pay higher taxes, right? They don't have any extra money. I get that. Like, we can look at this reasonably. But I do think like the middle class, if they want these things, they're going to have to participate in it. And I think it's fair to ask the rich to pay more. I think that's fair. And I think that's the honest conversation that we have to have, right? Like, we can't have our cake and eat it too. It's just, this is part of being like a responsible citizen and understanding that like, all things good come from cooperation and shared sacrifice in society. And I think we're gonna have to start thinking in that way if we want to rebuild our country, and improve things. So, that's my like probably like very controversial take. I think it's right. I mean, it's just what I happen to think is the honest truth. And so I decided to share that with you today, right? Something more forward thinking about like what is, I don't really write about it, but here I am. Here's Mike Brock telling you like what he sort of thinks in terms of his policy preferences right now. So anyways, I can see that I've upset some people with this take, with my takes today. What can I say? I'm a pragmatist. I'm like up to the point that I think that other people should be more pragmatic than they're willing to be. Anyways, that's what I wanted to chat about today. We'll chat about something. Maybe tomorrow we'll talk about, I want to talk maybe a little bit more about sort of our collective psychology and sort of managing this moment. That'll maybe be a softer, less controversial talk. People might enjoy that one more. But like I've enjoyed taking the time to chat with you people today. People who joined us live, I'll have the recording of this session up at Notes from the Circus. After we get the video processed and such. And thank you everybody, and hang in there. And I'll see you tomorrow. I think tomorrow I'll do this. So thank you.